Now, in 2011, when the Syrian conflict began, it was primarily to oust President Bashar al-Assad. But 3 years later, the war is still on. Assad is still in place. Thousands have died. Why is the conflict going on for so long?
The fact is that, the war, when the war started, it was not really to take Assad out. That was an afterthought by the United States.
Really?
When they adopted a policy of regime change, thinking that with him there, nothing will move well for the country. Okay. So that was how they changed from an internal conflict to a way of intervening in such a way that, the Assad regime ends.
If it wasn't about getting Assad out, so what was the conflict about?
The conflict was between the Sunnis and the Sunnis and their opposition partners, in Iraq, because Iraq has been ruled by a minority part.
Iraq or Syria?
Syria has been ruled, for a very long time by a family and the Ba'ath Party. So it's a long thing. It was a way for how do we get rid of them. There was a change. There was a change in the security, in the environment. The change to democracy and all that. People coming up to say that they're tired with sit-tight rulers. So it fell into that sort of a trap, and eventually it went out of hand. It was about following the path of Libya, but the United States realized that to intervene in Syria will be more difficult than it was in
Why is
Libya.
that so?
Because for one, Syria will implode in the sense that it will affect most of the countries around there. While Libya, you can easily deal with it. And then, you can deal with it. At once, there was a no-fly zone on Libya. It was easy to stifle the attempt by the Gaddafi regime to hold on to power. But in Syria, it could have been very difficult because, who are you going to support? Bearing in mind their fingers were burnt in the Libyan crisis, they were a bit more careful. They didn't want to intervene. And all the policies they adopted was that, we are not going to get involved in it. There will be no boots on the ground. They wanted, the other diversion was to support the warring factions. They call them moderate groups and extreme groups to help to support them and all that. They know that's a long process. It will take a very long process to sort out the crisis there. So there's other option. The other option is to build up a unified army, train them so that they could take on the Syrian government. But then that's a very long process for them. So the Americans were tied between and betwixt. They didn't even know exactly what to do, although they always say that there'll be no boots on the ground.
Now, initially, when this crisis started, it was between Assad's government forces and the rebels.
Yes.
But now we have Islamic State, in this issue now. How did ISIS come to flourish in Syria and actually establish its headquarters there?
ISIS is an extreme ideological movement that uses state instability to establish itself and adopting and looking at the security environment in which those states are so that they could have a sort of impact on it. On the whole, there are about 30,000 soldiers, of which you have a core members of about 20,000 soldiers. They can take up some states and even defeat some states. So they can be a threat and all that. So it happened because of the insecurity in that area. Most of these areas that emerged were failed state or faltering states. So as a result, it created an opening for them to intervene and then do things, to the surprise of many. So that's why ISIS emerged. But when it emerged, the West also was taken unawares in the sense that the progress they made in occupying some parts of Syria and Libya and all that, it was so fast, and that when they start to think about it, how do you deal with the ISIS? The only thing was that you have to use air bombardments, create an enabling environment. But even if you create an enabling environment, there must be foot soldiers to intervene to make sure that they contain ISIS spread in that area. But that was why the United States was not ready. They were not ready to do that. That they would like to carry out bombardments, and that they are going to use indigenous forces in these areas to go into this place and fight against ISIS. But you see, because of the religious mix there, the Sunnis and their opponents there in the region, it becomes difficult. Who do you arm? Who do you term to be a moderate? And thinking about Al-Qaeda and all the Al-Qaeda's influence in that area, you might always arm the wrong person. At the end, they'll come back to hunt you with the weapons you've given them. So the United States was a bit wary. Where do they go? Do you send troops there? No. Americans don't want to see their troops, and they don't want to see the return of body bags back to the States. And then in a distant country, people will start asking questions. Why did we get entangled there? And then to get ourselves involved in a quagmire. So that was one thing that they are wary about. Because each option they adopt, there are a lot of challenges that they are going to face.
But at the moment, ISIS seems to be overshadowing the civil war
that
was going on in Syria.
Yes.
And over 190,000 people have died.
Yes.
Why is this so? I mean, I think both issues should be tackled, not just ISIS.
But how do you tackle it? You know, you have support of Sunnis in what you're fighting for, and then you go against a Sunni state, and that they still be in support of you. If Iran is standing there looking at you, and then you're trying to resolve a lot of issues in the nuclear area with Iran, you know. So the P5+1 meetings that you have with Iran in terms of nuclear issues and all that, how do you handle such things? If you don't bring Iran to play, it will be difficult for you to be very successful in the short term.
So are you saying they have to dialogue with Iran?
Definitely, you can dialogue with the devil, but you know there are limits to what you can do. It is not that you're going to give in as if all is forgiven. There are issues on ground that the United States will have to sort out with the Iranians. But the Iranians are also telling them that, you know, it is what the United States destroyed the counterweight to Iran. That's when they took on Iraq and demolished Iraq and disturbed everything that was there as a state. That was the counterweight the West knew against Iran. Now, whatever happens, without firing a shot, Iran has become the preeminent power in that region. So how do you cope with that? And then a majority of Sunni leaders and Shiite in the other parts, it will be difficult for the United States to deal with it.
Are you saying the way to resolve this Syrian issue is to involve Iran? Once Iran is involved, there will be a solution. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. In fact, Iran's attack, you know, on selected targets was just to tell the world and also the Syrians that we are still here. You cannot wish away the Iranian power in that place. After all, it is the United States that created Iran to be a preeminent power. If not, Iraq has always been a counterweight to Iraq. But then you dealt with Iraq where there was no weapon of mass destruction. You've dealt with a state that could have, you've supported all through. All these days, you supported Iraq, and then you've destroyed it. Only without firing the shots. I think the Saudi foreign minister was once saying, you created a monster without even firing a shot. Iran has become the preeminent power in that area. And then they know that the United States will go. Now, President Obama in his last interview was saying that the concept of state building should come into United States policy. We cannot just go and fight and maintain or pacify a situation and then go away. The process of state building must take place.
Thank you very much for coming to Diplomatic Channel.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you've heard it all. Professor Dokubo says until the United States dialogues with Iran, there might be no solution to the Syrian war and the Islamic State crisis. And that's our package this week on Diplomatic Channel. Many thanks for watching. I'm Temitope Fagbemi.